Hi everyone again. I'm a PhD candidate in sociology at McGill University, and today I will talk about my ongoing dissertation research on labor internationalism in Turkey. And power of trade unions has declined across the industrialized world over the past several decades, and many discussions on how to revitalize unions and improve working conditions in the global era suggest that international labor solidarity could become an essential strategy. And especially in developing regions with poor labor rights conditions and low union density rates, workers need transnational alliances more than ever. And the Global Rights Index has repeatedly depicted Turkey as one of the 10 worst countries for working people. That's why, regardless of variations in their political and ideological orientations, most Turkish unions have cultivated cross-border ties. And they have engaged in organizational experiments with global labor organizing, especially in the last few decades, by building joint campaigns with transnational labor organizations, holding seminars, workshops, and education programs. And attending international meetings. And they've also mobilized support for signing global framework agreements between global unions and multinational companies, and taking part in international union confederations, decision-making bodies, and hired professional experts dealing exclusively with international affairs. But many Turkish unions still need to scale up and institutionalize their organizational experiments with global labor organizing. So they have mostly had difficulties internalizing a global perspective through a more general understanding. They have tended to avoid framing international issues as part of their core agenda or an integral part of their activities. And the existing cooperations have relied primarily on the efforts of labor experts dedicated to developing international relations. So their cross-border ties are not necessarily sustainable because they might erode when these enthusiastic officials and experts have left the office. And also Turkish unions have had divergent capacities to engage in global labor organizing. So why have some Turkish industrial unions been determined and able to generate viable international strategies and alliances, while their counterparts in other sectors fail to do so? And there are no systematic comparisons across sectors to answer this question. That's why, through a cross-industry analysis of labor internationalism in Turkey, I explore if and to what extent sectoral dynamics explain Turkish trade unions' motivation and capacity to invest in transnational labor solidarity. And my research aims to offer empirical insight into how national trade unions, especially those in the global south, engage in global labor organizing. And it provides essential lessons to labor organizations with limited resources in developing countries to become transnational labor activists, creating solutions for better work. For this project, I've conducted in-depth interviews with union leaders, expert labor scholars in Turkey, and officials from global union federations. Also, I've been doing archival research to analyze union documents as primary sources since last year and review the policies and legislations regulating Turkish unions' international affiliations. And my ongoing research shows that In sectors where final products come out, trade unions are more likely to benefit from transnational solidarity, as they have the chance to use the threat of consumer boycotts, putting pressure on international brands to secure better working conditions. For instance, many food processing and ready-made clothing unions in Turkey have aimed to attract customer attention, consumer attention, and harm multinational companies' reputations, thereby pushing them to monitor work-related abuses by their suppliers worldwide. So in these kinds of sectors, workers have a kind of structural power coming from consumption. But how about workers producing raw materials, like agricultural workers or coal miners? And in the absence of structural power coming from consumption, how do they mobilize cross-border activism? And in sectors where raw materials are produced, my research shows that Turkish industrial unions are less likely to engage in international labor organizing, as they have lacked the chance to put direct pressure on global brands to improve the employment conditions of their members. For instance, according to a Turkish labor expert working for a union in the mining industry, international relations in the mining sector are relatively weak because the focus of labor internationalism in Turkey is on consumption and customer perception. But in the production of raw materials, workers and their working conditions tend to be invisible. So it can be more challenging for them to organize global alliances. Overall, if workers in some sectors have structural power coming from consumption, there is no harm in using it as a tool for defending workers' interests. But transnational solidarity can deliver better work across different industries of the Turkish economy only if union officials and labor activists avoid concentrating simply on name and shame campaigns targeting brand images of transnational companies. So it's essential to mobilize transnational labor solidarity through the production, processing, marketing, and distribution of commodities. Also because global giants have started to shift their supply chains to emerging market economies like Turkey since the late 1990s. And a global supply chain covers the entire stages of manufacturing and delivering goods and services in more than one country. And since Turkey has become an alternative supply source for global giants, new opportunities for global labor activism have also emerged for Turkish workers. For example, the Petroleum, Chemical and Rubber Workers Union is among the pioneers of labor internationalism in Turkey. And its leaders and experts know that they need to focus on the big picture by looking at the relevant global supply chain from the oil well, the starting point of production to transportation. So they think they should develop joint campaigns with unions in the transportation industry. So they try to mobilize workers hired by various suppliers affiliated with the same multinational companies, although these workers work in different industries. For instance, many workers producing tires, rubber, and plastic have worked for suppliers operating within the supply chain of global automotive companies. That's why officials from this Petroleum Workers Union declare that they intend to collaborate also with unions in the automotive industry. So my research reveals that the key factor behind this union's successful experiments with labor internationalism is its awareness of the functioning of global supply chains. So it's crucial to understand that the fate of workers and trade unions in a specific industry depends on the actions of their counterparts in different sectors. That's why cross-border labor activism can deliver better work in the global era only if national unions across various sectors engage in collaborative projects and campaigns. However, in countries with intense social and political polarization, like Turkey, the space of international trade unionism is closely linked to domestic conflicts, especially union fragmentation and competition at the national level. Even if they don't have conflicting interests or divergent political and ideological orientations, the best case scenario is that Turkish industrial unions have been mostly indifferent or oblivious to each other's problems. And this prevents them from building up effective international coordination of action as well. For instance, forestry workers in the public sector and woodworkers in the private sector are represented by different industrial unions in Turkey. But unions in these two distinct but interrelated sectors are affiliated with the same global union federation, the International Federation of Building and Woodworkers Union. And I interviewed an expert from this global federation, and she said forestry is one of the most dangerous sectors. So international solidarity is central to organizing education programs and taking precautions regarding occupational health and safety to deal with forest fires and life safety issues. And in contrast, few woodworkers suffer from only minor injuries throughout the year. So in the wood and paper industry, companies have started relying on the domestic markets over the last few years, especially since the pandemic. Due to the increasing costs of buying raw materials from Europe. And under these circumstances, extreme pressure has been put on Turkish forestry workers to increase the magnitude and speed of their production. And immigrant workers have been hired to fulfill growing demands. And as a result, 500 to 600 workers died in 6 months. So with an increase in multinational companies' sales, woodworkers achieve high job security, higher wages and promotions. So Turkish unions in the wood industry might be content with this situation. However, the same conditions have led to poor working conditions, even deadly work environments for forestry workers. That's why different unions representing workers in the same supply chain should interact with each other and create solutions for better work for both parties. However, my research demonstrates that there are no solidarity links among these unions, even if they are affiliated with the same global union federation. But still, there are Turkish trade unions realizing that they must cooperate with each other to build effective international relations. For example, some agriculture, livestock, and food processing unions in Turkey have decided to work together on behalf of workers operating in the agri-food supply chain and establish the agriculture platform this year. So overall, my ongoing research suggests that if worker solidarities do not emerge at the local and national levels first, we cannot expect transnational unionism to create better work in Turkey. If Turkish unions do not focus on the big picture by comprehending the dynamics of global supply chains, thereby searching for alliances across different industries, they cannot internalize and institutionalize a global perspective to create a sustainable impact on workers' lives. Finally, a supply chain law will enter into force in Germany in about 3 months. Accordingly, German companies will be held responsible for any violations regarding human rights, child labor, environment, and natural resources by the firms in their supply chains from which they purchase products and services. And if companies don't take measures against such violations by their suppliers, they will be subject to penalties of up to 2% of their annual sales. So this legislation will affect countries having trade relations with Germany, like Turkey. So it will create favorable conditions for Turkish workers to realize the importance of understanding the structure of global supply chains, interacting with other unions across different sectors, and considering new forms of cross-border activism. Thank you so much for listening.